What if your struggle with confidently expressing your sensuality stems from loyalties and rivalries with the women who taught you how acceptable femininity should look? Many women want to feel confident in their bodies and free in their self expression, but shrink or freeze when it's time to be seen or to be expressive. It's as if there's a hidden, mysterious obstacle or fear blocking the way to fully inhabiting their bodies and feeling true confidence. We usually attribute this to our own insecurities as women, but what if the deeper roots are actually inherited? Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Sea of Radiance. I'm your hostess, Erin Pettis, and today I'm exploring why, for many women, confident expression of sensuality feels unsafe and unsupported. I'll also be looking at some of the origins of comparison and competition amongst women, and why female relationships can feel so darn complicated. The Sea of Radiance, that's this podcast as well as my larger mentoring business, is all about feminine embodiment and sensuality, including finding freedom and self-expression. But before women can feel safe enough to do that, we must untangle the ties that bind us. Today, I'm uncovering somewhat covert sources that may be limiting your expansive expression. You may not have considered whose influences are playing a key role in the background of your life and keeping you feeling confined. The quiet voices still echoing from your developmental years may be ensuring that you keep playing small. So most of us have experienced subtle or overt competition with other women. This can play out through comparison, gossip, exclusion, appearance policing. This is familiar territory, but the judgments can be especially hurtful when they come from family members or from friends, because we would expect or hope to find safety and support in these women. Throughout our lives, we inherit beliefs about what womanhood should look like, and some of the ways of enforcing these constructs amongst female family members can be painful enough to cause what are termed the mother wound or the sister wound. We grow up with subtle and some not so subtle messaging from our mothers, our grandmothers, aunties, sisters, and other women in our lives. They're informing us about the correct versus the unacceptable ways to be a woman, and that can take many forms. Maybe you were raised on conditioning that women should get married, have children, and take care of the house. Or maybe you were told in no uncertain terms what the appropriate ways to dress are versus what is too slutty, for example. Or maybe what an acceptable amount of makeup is, or which parts of your body are okay to enhance and which are to be hidden or downplayed in the correct display of modesty. Maybe you picked up on the Goldilocks level of sexual expression, or anything beyond that would be reprimanded. Maybe the roles you were expected to play in partnered relationships were outlined for you. There could have been comments about your weight or other aspects of your appearance, etc., etc. You get the idea. These messages are often coming from older generations of women and families. They can carry the feeling that you are being evaluated for appropriateness by, say, your mother, grandmother, or auntie. You may have learned to gauge your worth in some ways by how successfully you abided by these notions of proper womaning that were held by previous generations. And depending on how all of that played out for you, you could still feel some of the mother wound as a result. I think all of us women have experienced competition, distrust, jealousy, and comparison between ourselves and other women. Within families, like between sisters or women of the same generation, the resultant pain of that could be called the sister wound. But interestingly, jealousy, distrust, and competition can also be found between mothers and daughters too. I recently read that, in fact, the original Grimm's Brothers fairy tale of Snow White, which was from 1812, actually cast Snow White's mother, not her stepmother, as envious of her daughter being the fairest of them all. You can imagine how limiting and even paralyzing this could be for daughters to grow up with envious mothers. Similarly, we can think of stage moms who attempt to live their unlived dreams or lives through their daughters and vicariously. This is debilitating to the daughters in the long run. I want to underscore here that the wounding is generally not inflicted consciously by bad women. These women are not typically intentionally trying to damage or emotionally scar their daughters or granddaughters or sisters, but instead, that within families, these hurtful messages and judgments and behaviors are primarily sourced in unhealed pain that's passed down from women who themselves adopted or avoided specific behaviors, usually as a means of survival. So, grandma who pressured you to get married, or the mother who told you you need to lose weight, or the sister who mocked your short skirt, well, they probably weren't speaking from a malicious place, but rather projecting their own inherited beliefs or their actual lived experiences about how you could be most attractive to a mate or how to help you avoid being the victim of a sexual predator. Regarding the mother wound that you may have inherited, consider that preceding generations of women were shaped by very different cultural, religious, and circumstantial influences than us, and that many older women were taught that, beauty and youth correlate to worth and value, that self expression can be dangerous for women, and that self sacrifice is a measure of a woman's goodness and purity, that self sacrifice is a necessary part of playing the role of mother and wife well. So if your mother never felt free or expressive or fulfilled, she may have unconsciously restricted or regulated those same freedoms in you. And she might have said some version of, don't wear that, that's too revealing, or nice girls don't act like that, or say that, or you're too loud, or maybe she commented on your appearance in shaming ways. Whatever her methods, she made her disapproval of your joy, your pleasure, or your sensuality abundantly clear. And I'm in no way excusing this hurtful behavior, but I do want to bring it to our conscious attention and reframe where it was probably coming from. Although sometimes extremely hurtful, I'm not villainizing the previous generations of women because their motivation behind some of this was often to protect us. Many mothers fear judgment, rejection, or danger for their daughters. And some of those judgments and restrictions were coming from a place of love that is maybe contaminated or distorted by their own fears and projections. They were undoubtedly limited in the sense that they weren't allowed to express themselves fully either, especially sexually or sensually. And regarding the sister wound, that many of us have acquired, there's a sense of scarcity, even early on around attention or status or success. In many ways, American media and culture teach girls that they are rivals for love and for visibility and for worth. And adult women continue that by comparing their bodies and their perceived successes in career or parenting relationships. Well, obviously, also there's some lifestyle envy that's fueled by social media. Many women feel threatened by other women who are confident and uninhibited in their sensual expression. And then they troll them or they try to sabotage them. And usually it's because they wish to emulate them. So I raise this very important issue because the ways in which we are divided and that we perpetuate this divisiveness and tear each other down as women are insidious and pernicious within us. And I feel it's vital that we women, as we evolve, become more conscious of the ways in which we ourselves are sustaining this division and oppression amongst ourselves. Competition amongst women disconnects us from our collaborative power and our strength as part of a collective of supportive women. In America, we have made great strides in terms of not needing to be in competition with each other for men to ensure our survival, like as we were in previous centuries. I think that the patriarchal systems are probably most likely where this pitting of women against each other originated, but it's sustained in families and societies where girls feel that to outshine their sisters, their friends, or to be more attractive, joyful, or successful than their mothers would result in them being shamed or shunned. And this is a formidable fear not to be underestimated. This is perpetuated when girls and women absorb a scarcity mentality and act as if they must compete for limited resources. But where we can take back the reins is through fostering true, authentic solidarity among women, both within families and in societies at large. Competition amongst women is enormously profitable for corporations. Division and competition sell a whole lot of products. Trillions of dollars are made by industries profiting off of women's insecurities. Women who feel like they are not enough are easier to sell to. And the more we feel like something is missing in our lives, and the more we outsource seeking contentment. But a woman who's at home in her body and who loves herself is way harder to manipulate in any way. Some ways that you can begin to break this shame cycle between women in your life are first by becoming aware of your inherited conditioning and messaging. And you can use the reflection prompts I'll include in the show notes to explore this further. Secondly, know that you can choose new, compassionate relational patterns and supportive messaging for yourself and for your daughters and for the women in your life. And once you see what the patterns are, the patterns that limit you and your female relatives, you can consciously choose not to take on the shame of other women in your family or in your culture. It's important to remember that your sensuality and your pleasure are not a betrayal, and they're not wrong, and that your radiance doesn't diminish another woman's light. Although it may make other women uncomfortable for you to become more confident and bold in your self-expression, that's sort of all the more reason to embody a bigger you. Very inspirational. It's time for us to look into ourselves and investigate how we have been influenced and navigated even by these wounds so that we can change the direction and we can find sovereignty. Healing the mother and sister wounds isn't about staying stuck in a space of blaming others or a state of victimization from the past. It's really about personal liberation and breaking a very oppressive cycle. When you shine, you light the way for other women to do the same. So I'll put several prompts for further reflection and journal writing in the show notes for you. I really hope this episode was helpful for you, and if it was, please like, subscribe, and share it with the women in your life who might benefit. I'll see you next time.